Jimmy Hubbard, Revolver's creative director here. Today I'm joined with Adam D and Jesse Leach of Killswitch Engage. How you guys doing today?
Lovely.
Fine and dandy.
All right. Adam, is it pronounced Dutkiewicz or Dutkiewicz?
Dutkiewicz.
Dutkiewicz. Okay.
Dutkiewicz. Guys in Behemoth coached me on how to say my last name correctly.
So May 21st, 2002, your guys' album, Alive or Just Breathing, came out on Roadrunner Records. Coming up on the 21st of this month will mark the 20th anniversary of that album. What do you guys remember about that time of the band when you guys were writing and recording Alive or Just Breathing?
That was 100% a different time for us. Mentally, physically, very young, and just, we didn't have any expectations. Me personally, I can't speak for Jesse on that. I think, the band was just starting out. We did our fair release, and, once we got signed to Roadrunner, it kind of was like one of the most exciting things that ever happened to us. And it was just like, hope, promise, cool, but if it fails, it fails.
Yeah, for me, it was definitely an odd time. I actually gotten married to my now ex 2 days before the release. Weird relationship there, and just a lot of just being a kid. I didn't really know who I was. I was projecting. I think I was projecting a personality that I couldn't live up to, and I think that all kind of crumbled once the album came out and I kind of went on tour. I realized I was just not okay. So it was a really difficult time for me. I had a difficult time making that record, but I think because of all that, it made it what it is. The lyrics and the content and the sound of the vocals in it, with a lot of help from Adam's coaching and really being patient with me. It was a really weird time in my life, but I think that's kind of why that record was the way it was for at least my element of it, was just going through a rough time, as per usual when I make albums.
I think the key word in everything you just said was patience.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just remember the whole patience thing brings me to driving all the way to Providence and not getting anything out of you. Like those round trips with an ADAT machine. Yeah, it's like, oh man, I drove 3 hours today and got nothing done on the record. Cool.
Yeah, it was a tough time, man, for sure. Yeah. And that's why
we were just young and dumb. Now we're old and dumb.
And another thing too, as far as Adam says, the expectations, there was definitely not a huge expectation. I don't think any of us really had sort of stars in our eyes. We were just local kids from the Northeast that started to catch a little bit of momentum. And in my mind, I thought, we'll play in front of 300 kids a night on some tour and it'll eventually fizzle out like most hardcore bands do. I had no idea. I don't think any of us did.
The only person with expectations was Mike Gitter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
A&R rep. Remember the phone call? To you? He's like, you need to sound more like Creed.
But not only that, but he had actually sent me Stained and Creed in a package and a letter read for some motivation. This is the kind of stuff that's doing really well. Give this stuff a listen, and maybe you can use that as sort of like a reference point for what you might want to do with this album. And Adam D and I were like, what?
What an inspiring thing for a musician artist. Sound more like somebody else.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, at the time,
we should have shit in a box and sent it back to him. Son of a bitch.
To his credit, though, he did believe in us and he did hear something in us. And to this day, I definitely commend Mike Gitter for what he's done for not just us, but for music in general. Big love to Gitter, regardless.
If we never got signed to Roadrunner, who knows what would have happened?
I remember when you guys signed to Roadrunner. I think, I followed all the stuff that Carl was putting out through Ferret, and that's, you guys released the self-titled, the first record. It was kind of the first time I really heard that the kind of classic underground metal influence kind of interpreted in a new way, like the At the Gates, Carcass, the early 90s sound of underground metal kind of put through a new filter, with a little bit more hardcore influences in it. And I love that self-titled. So when you guys signed to Roadrunner, I remember being really excited because it was a different time in music. Roadrunner was not putting out the kind of stuff that they, were known for. And the heavy metal scene was a lot. There was still all the underground stuff in the bands like In Flames and Soilwork and the Swedish and Scandinavian bands out there, but they kind of, I don't know, the metal scene was just different then. So when you guys signed to Roadrunner, I was really excited because I felt like it was going to put this kind of harken back to heavy metal again. It kind of did. I mean, do you guys remember what it was like at the time then? And was that something you guys were cognizant of, the kind of stuff Roadrunner was putting out then and what you guys were doing?
Yeah, I remember there was a lot of new metal going on, and in my mind, I was always all about the riff, man. It's about the riff, and there were no riffs going on. So there are a lot of riffs going on in the underground, and we were a part of all that emerging. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think for me it was. I just liked extremities. I really enjoyed metal from, Machine Head to Sepultura at the time to Entombed. And then I loved hardcore. I was super into Earth Crisis and Bloodlet and Integrity. And for me, it was just the culmination of those styles coming together in that particular time that I was kind of cherry picking from everything. So I was influenced equally by hardcore and metal and even a bit of like reggae music as well.
Your guys' sound kind of became known as modern metalcore. And there was a fair amount of it out at the time. And Adam, you were producing a lot of those bands as well. I remember Alive or Just Breathing coming out and just putting it on for the first time and just being like, fuck, this is really good. Like, this is gonna, like, I hoped it would catch on, and it did. It seemed like a lot of other bands kind of picked up on what you guys were doing, and it kind of became a little bit of a sound and a scene. Did you guys obviously didn't have any expectations for the record, but how'd you guys feel after it came out, the response and the way the scene kind of grew after the release of that record?
I was just kind of riding the wave. We were just kind of, five dudes doing our thing. We wrote the music, we were touring on the music. And I guess I never really, pay attention too much of what's happening around me or if we have any sort of influence on anybody. It was just more so like, get out there and do the damn thing. Like I said before, there were no expectations going in, and the fact that all of a sudden, we were picking up momentum and, playing shows all over the place. The shows kept growing. It was just an awesome time for us. It was so much fun and, amazing to be a part of.
Yeah. And for me, it was the first time to really hear that people connected with the lyrics on some other level where, before I knew it, people wanted to like find me and seek me out. And, I was the first time that people were like following me when I'd go to get a slice of pizza or, hearing people get emotional about a certain lyric that I wrote. It was the first time that started to happen to me where people were latching onto the words, and it kind of intimidated me at the time because I wasn't ready for it. You take a bunch of hardcore kids, metal kids from the Northeast scene that were just playing small shows and starting to pick up momentum and get attention. And before you know it, people want you to sign stuff. And it's like, what? Signed? Why would you want my signature? So to me, it was really foreign when that momentum started to pick up. It was a bit intimidating too, I think, at the time.
Yeah. I mean, that was the other thing I wanted to mention is lyrically, there was, I used to kind of the positive, hopeful take in lyrics in some hardcore bands, but in metal, it was kind of really the first time I was really hearing it. And it's something I've always really latched onto and loved about Killswitch Engage is kind of your approach to lyrics and kind of the like hopeful, positive aspect of it. It just was new to hear it in this kind of extreme metal for me. And I loved it. But you mentioned that, you were going through a dark time. And is that the hopefulness in the lyrics? Is that kind of how you deal with it? Or it like, when you say projection, is it like you're kind of reaching for that hope as well?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Presenting, wanting to be a certain way or having a certain type of hope, even though deep down inside there was a lot of darkness. But I think that's the push and pull of the lyrics, whether it's me or Howard on lyrics. I think that's kind of the charm of Killswitch, is being able to deal with the light and the dark. And for the most part, hope prevails in a lot of the messages. And I think that directly is because of hardcore, growing up with a positive mental attitude, posi youth. Like, I was totally into that stuff before I got into like metal, modern metal, stuff like, you can even go back to like Youth of Today, Bad Brains, Minor Threat, where it was about inflicting, even if you will, positive things, like really pushing for that. And that was a huge influence on me as a young kid. So into my, as we started to like make these types of records where the genres blended, I was totally pulling from that and the fact that I'm a son of a preacher man. So I think I was still bringing out some of those Christian ideals, from where I was at that time in my life. I've changed quite a bit then with my view, but back then I was definitely a lot more indoctrinated. So you can see there's religious stuff going on there as well, especially in Elaborate Just Breathing.
The Christian theme I pick up on, but you always seem to find that positive kind of, I don't know if it's moralistic's the right word, but that kind of, I don't know, the kind of positivity that runs through all like religious doctrine or ideals is, something that I love, I'm not sure about like organized religion, but the kind of ideas that it teaches, like, I can relate to those. I like those ideas. And it seems like you've never really deviated from that positive attitude in your lyrics, which kind of really started with Alive or Just Breathing. So,
yeah, I think for me, that's the stuff I still hold on to this day. I've sort of cherry picked what works for me and then left behind the things that don't work for me when it comes to organized religion. And like you said, there's in a lot of doctrines, they talk about love. They talk about, man or humanity or mankind being equal on equal footing. So those types of things, the golden rule, do unto others that you have done to you. Those little things stuck with me and still stick with me and make me want to be a better person and try to help people out. And yeah, that's definitely stayed with me since those days. But I did carry that from what I learned. But as you said, as you get older, you sort of have more of a critical eye on certain things you find contradictory or don't work with you. And so that's kind of where I am now in my life. But back then I was pretty indoctrinated, but I tried to push that the positive side of things that I was learning and part of my culture onto those lyrics. And I think it still stands the test of time, because talking about love, that's never going to get old. I think everybody can relate to that. Hopefully everyone can relate to that.
Nowadays, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I know, right? I know.
Yeah, that's true. Which makes it even more important to kind of have music like that, I think. Do you guys have a favorite song on Alive or Just Breathing? Or maybe can you guys rank your 5 favorite Alive or Just Breathing tracks?
Oh boy.
Oh, God. I don't even remember what's on that record.
Want me to listen?
I've got a soft spot for Rise Inside. I think just because it's kind of got this really, again, positive lyrical content, which is very derivative of Bob Marley. I could say I was easily listening to a ton of Bob Marley and probably ripped off stuff. The phrase that he used, emancipate yourself from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds, is a direct result of listening to that song and writing Rise Inside. Just Barely Breathing, I love it because it's the epic song of that whole album, and it's a very sort of what's the word I'm looking for, contemplative of existence. It's really I can't think of the word, but you know what I'm talking about, when you're wondering why we're here, why are we alive, what's going on, that sort of like that state of mind. I love that song as well. Those are the 2 that come off the top of my head that I love off that record.
How about you, Adam?
I'll go with his answers.
Well, there's so many great riffs on that record, like really fucking good riffs.
Well, you have to say.
What about your 5 favorite
I guess,
riffs?
I could probably say Last Serenade because that was the song that kind of put us on the map. You know, it did so much for the beginning of our career.
Yeah, the riffs and that, the intro, I remember first hearing that and being like, wow, that's like Bad Brains quickness. Like it's got that, or Sam Black Church, you know, that stomp riff that has the space in it. I love that shit. I still love that riff. That's a great riff.
I was listening to a lot of Sam Black Church and Bad Brains back then. So,
hell yeah, dude. Self Revolution's another good one, I think, especially with like the percussion that goes on in there. That really hadn't been done much in metal and hardcore from what I know, like bongos and congas and whatever was going on there. Number Days. I mean,
yeah,
the fact that it kicks off and there's that space and we're like, what do we say? Like, what do we say during that spot? It's such a good hardcore thing. Like the music stops and you say something. And I don't remember how we came up with it, but I'm sure it was Adam and I discussing it. But when it says the time approaches, it kind of sets the album going. Like you just go from that phrase on. To me, it's a powerful first song. And the lyrics are very sort of dark and, you know, angsty. That song and the riffs on that one. I remember, quick story, when we first played Number of Days live, when we were still kind of working it out, we'd opened for this great band, Burned by the Sun, for the old school heads who remember what a killer band they were. And we played that song for the first time somewhere in Connecticut. I think it was Connecticut or New Jersey. And I was headbanging so hard, I actually hit the top of my eye on my knee and almost knocked myself out. I remember seeing stars and like getting weak, and I had a knot on my head for weeks after that. But it was just that riff that when Number Days kicks in, oh, it's so heavy. I love that.
I love that breakdown on Vita Infra too. Vita, am I saying that right?
Yeah, Vita Infra, yeah.
Yeah, that breakdown, the lyrics. I love that.
The mosh part too, man. Yeah. That's got a riff, dude. Oh my, are you kidding me? The riffs in that. This is a Joel song. Didn't Joel write that one, Adam?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, hard to remember. Fun record.
What about favorite songs to play live? What songs do you guys still play live from that album?
Serenade every night, just about, right?
Yeah, just because, you know, like I was saying, that was an important song in our career. We'll trickle in some stuff. We were doing Rise Inside for a while.
Yeah, Life to Lifeless, we played a ton when I first rejoined.
I'm so tired of playing that song.
Yeah, we had to put it on the shelf for a while. We played it a lot.
Yeah,
it gets the crowd going. That speaking of riffs, that riff when it kicks in with that straight up rock riff, like you see the crowd, especially at festivals, you know, they do the European bounce. So that was a fun one to play at festivals. And we definitely played Just Barely Breathing in the past few tours. And I love song comes up in the set because it starts off quiet and we're actually able to take a breather and the audience calms down and it builds up to that part when it kicks in. I love that, playing that song live. It's super fun. And the way it ends too. It kind of like starts off quiet and kind of goes quiet.
Yeah, I love that ending. I love that whole song. It's really
that song's too long.
Oh, that's why I like it. See, that's why I like it. Long songs are okay, man.
Hurry up and get to the blast beats.
You guys have kind of mentioned this, but were there any major influences that you guys were listening to around the time of that album?
I guess you pretty much listed a bunch of them, and I already listed a bunch of them already, like the Bad Brains and Sound Black Church, and then, you know, the stuff that was going on in Europe, you know, the Carcass, you know, At the Gates, Napalm Death. Yeah, that kind of vibe for sure.
Yeah, I would have to add on Faith No More for me, and a band called Edge of Sanity, which the main guy in it, Dan Swano, was a massive influence on wanting to do the melodic vocals versus the screaming and the growling. I think he's one of the first guys to really do it properly years before we did it. And he's a guy, I feel like, you know, he even helped Opeth get their start. The guy is a total genius. He's got a bunch of great bands, but he's, I don't think, mentioned enough.
Yeah.
Dan Spano and Edge of Sanity, and also to boot Integrity. I think Integrity were a massive influence as well for me. I mean, not even just sonically, because they mixed metal and hardcore perfectly, but Dwid's vocal performances, especially on Humanity's the Devil, just crazy next level good. And without that band, I don't think metalcore, whatever it's called today, would even be what it is. And I'd have to add Bloodlet to that list too, because I think they were super crucial in helping form the mixture of genres that we do now.
Yeah, those are the bands I gravitated towards as a little kid. Like when I first got into hardcore, I didn't quite, as a young metalhead, I didn't quite grasp, Murphy's Law or Agnostic Front. It took me a little while to kind of get into that stuff. But initially, like when I heard Integrity for the first time and Bloodlet, like I got that immediately. And Edge of Sanity is great. I fucking love everything Dan Swano does. And
Genius.
Crimson, like, and even Purgatory Afterglow. What's the song on there that's like, it's like a death rock song. It was the first time I ever heard that.
That's actually a great point you just made there. Death rock. He really did. I mean, before Entombed was doing it, the guy was doing genres and styles before anybody was. And even the tones on that record, Purgatory Afterglow, are so raw with that distorted bass. Like nobody was really doing it like that. Maybe Dismember and Entombed, I guess, had that sort of tone, but he was really a first with a lot with what he's doing. And you mentioned Crimson. You want to talk about a long song? It's a 45-minute long song. One song, 45 minutes.
What are they doing? What are they doing?
And it works. To me, it works. I think it's genius. But yeah.
I love Edge of Sanity. It was one of those things like Trevor and I would always hashtag back and forth. The Dan Swano rules on Instagram. Okay. It's kind of like a joke, but Dan Swano is another producer, performer, guitar player. How does being a producer, Adam, and a performer, how does that kind of come into play, especially around that time you're producing so many different bands? Did that have any influence on, what you did with Alive or Just Breathing?
I guess so. It's just two different hats. It's hard to separate, obviously when you're playing live, you can't think like, critically. You just got to think about having a good time and, the moment. But, and I guess producing my own band, it gets a little, I get a little more crazy and maniacal and, I don't know. It's two different, ways of looking at, making music, I guess.
Gotcha.
I will say this though, to sort of add on to that, he does a really good job of doing the one thing and doing the other thing. Seeing him write a riff and then seeing him in the studio working with me on vocals, he's very much the producer and he thinks about the bigger picture. It's not just about him and his songs or his riffs. He truly does look at it as like what's better for the album or the song, which I commend him on. He's very good at separating the two.
It's all about me, bro.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's, at the end of the day, a band should be a culmination of its parts. And, everybody's, it just gives the music more personality when it's got more people involved and different takes. If it was one person doing everything, it'd be so one-sided. And that's the way I would do it.
Well, it's not always the case. So hats off to you for that, man.
And, how'd that, with the album, how was the writing for it? Because I know Mike writes a lot and so does Joel. How was the process of writing the record with everyone involved?
Yeah, that was back in the day where we actually got in a room and played together, which funny enough, I'm going to go do that with the guys right after this interview. But yeah, it was more of a collective thing, but it's just, it's so cool to make music that way. We're all in a room just throwing riffs at each other and sharing ideas. And, I think we fell away from that writing that way the last few records. So here I am back in Massachusetts, ready to meet up with the guys and jam.
Full circle, man.
Yeah, right.
One of the other things that really stands out about that album is the vocal approach. As I meant, it was such a different time in the metal music scene. That record was, it was a mix of the kind of death and black metal vocals, I suppose, and hardcore. But then the singing and the hooks, like with the self-titled, you guys got into it a little bit.
Yeah, I know you like little melodic flushes here and there. Yeah. Here and there. I don't even know the name of the song, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Or even like What's the song we put on the second record? And it's on the first one, Temple from Within, where it's just
Yeah.
got a little bit of melody kind of thrown in there. You know, doing my best Mike Patton impersonation, slightly off key. Yeah, trying my best.
There were like little hints of it on the self-title, but then Alive or Just Breathing came out and there was fucking hooks everywhere. Like I couldn't get out of my head so many of those like little singing parts and hooks throughout the entire album. I mean, I imagine that was something that was conscious when you guys were a conscious decision you guys made when you were writing it. But it was also, there wasn't a lot of that out, you know, like In Flames and Soilwork would dabble with it here and there back then. And you guys, actually saw you guys play with In Flames at CBGB's, Rich Hall show, which was awesome. But you know, like they were dabbling with it, but they weren't going for it the way that Alive or Just Breathing did. Like those hooks are huge. And, you know, and after that, it kind of opened the door for a lot of other bands to not in extreme metal to not be afraid to do that. I imagine it was a conscious decision to do that. How was that process trying to put those hooks together?
I think it was sorry. I think it was as simple as some guys like melody. You know, we listen to all different types of music. You know, we're not just like listen to metal only. You know, so I was always pushing, you know, to incorporate more melody and, you know, just to create that moment in the song that took you away from the aggression for a second, you know, and it's more atmospheric, you know, thought towards the vocal delivery, and, you know, just I think it keeps it interesting, you know, instead of just the same for like, you know, 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. It's just it's a mixture of the influences. You know, we'd go on long drives in the van or even in Adam's car going somewhere, and we would listen to, you know, At the Drive-In or The Verve or Jawbox, you know, Discord stuff, indie rock mixed in with the aggressive metal or Cannibal Corpse. Like we were really diverse with our tastes. So, you know, and these guys were writing stuff that lent itself to melody. It was kind of a no-brainer. So I'd come up with an initial idea, and then Adam would help me sort of make it more musical because I had no clue what I was doing. So it was really a collaboration, a group effort of like, let's make this more melodic because that's what we like anyway. We Only Living Witness would be another band I have to mention. Huge. Mike D and I to this day worship at the altar of that band, but they were playing heavy music but putting melody over it. So for me, it was like, where can we make this interesting with the voice? And again, aping Mike Patton, who is like the god of all vocals, he would do such interesting things. So for us, it was like, let's add some of that influence in. Like, you don't have to stick to your standard hardcore metal thing. Let's make it our style.
And what do you guys think when you started hearing that kind of catch on in the scene? I mean, everyone does it their own way, but that was kind of, I don't know, it really kind of, I felt like it really opened the door. Like, I don't know if you guys see that influence around you guys, but that was kind of a pivotal record in metal and metalcore, you know?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
You guys are so modest.
Well, I think because there was a lot of that going on, you know. I think we were just at the right place at the right time, but there was a lot of bands doing that in the underground that didn't get their due, you know, bands that were adding that melody. It might not have been the same style of melody, but it was happening around us. So we were a part of it. We just happened to get sort of put on a higher level of exposure because of it, you know?
Yeah. It's a great album. I love that record. I was listening to it.
I don't know.
I love it, dude. I was listening to it all weekend, and there was like so many. It had been a couple of years since I listened to it, and I'll listen to certain tracks I have on different playlists, but as a whole, this weekend was kind of the first time I sat down and listened to it from beginning to end. And there's so many parts in there. I just forgot about like that, the melancholy, like hook on Just Barely Breathing that kind of ends the track. Like it's just a great record. Are there any songs on the album you guys have never played live?
No, we played through all of those.
We did the anniversary tour, right?
Yeah, so we played through all.
So we played the whole record.
That's awesome. I wish I could have seen that.
That was with Shadows Fall too. It was like us, Shadows Fall, and Akaro, this band that doesn't exist anymore that were great. Yeah, it was a fun tour.
What about kind of the band's trajectory and all the albums to come after Alive or Just Breathing? How is that record in particular, the success of it, or even just like how it defined the band's style? How did that inform the albums to come, especially after you came back to the fold, Jesse? It really just seems like you kind of picked up where you left off. Like, I don't know, like how did it form? Even other projects you guys did. Like, I love the Times of Grace stuff. Like, how did Alive or Just Breathing kind of pave the way for what you guys would do going forward?
I don't know. I think it's definitely a bit more of an immature record of ours. I think we're playing more riffs now. So I think naturally we grew as players. And I think obviously Jesse learned how to sing. So like back in the day, it's so funny thinking about making that record. Like I pushed him so hard. He'd be like, he wouldn't be able to talk for like 2 days afterwards. And you can hear it. Like Jesse's like going for it on that record with all of his screaming. And maybe I was partially the reason you had to quit the band because you learned how to scream the wrong way and would just torch your fucking throat every show we'd play. I'm glad you relearned how to scream and not kill yourself. But you can just hear it on the Ferret record and Alive or Just Breathing, just like really just torching your throat, man.
Yeah, that's true.
So well, I guess we just learned how to do our, play our instruments better from that record, from doing that record, I guess, right?
It did sort of set the standard higher too, because you saw the impact those songs had because of the way they were crafted, which, when you're writing a good song is a good song. It doesn't matter the genre or the style. So I would say, I think from that record on, myself, as I moved forward outside of Killswitch, what I had learned from working with Adam and Joel and just the way that to craft this song and Mike D is that had an impact on me for anything I did after that, whether it be Seamless or The Empire Shall Fall. At the end of our recording sessions, I would have that mind of like, is this a good song? So songwriting to me was huge after that record. That's when I recognized, because you went from bands like Overcast, and I would say Aftershock still had good songwriting in it though. And Corinne, my band Corinne, we were just riff after riff. It wasn't really about like songwriting per se. It was almost like check our riffs out. Like we're evil 666 devil core. Like, oh, shit's crazy. There wasn't much thought of like, oh, we're going to create a nice song for people that you'll remember it. You'll be humming it. And after Alive or Just Breathing, that kind of like stuck. It was like, oh, you can be in this genre and still craft a really good song.
I'm a sucker for a good arrangement that gets to the point, doesn't muck around.
Well, there's a lot of them on that album. How many tours did you guys actually do after the release of it? I know I saw the Soilwork tour.
Uno.
I did one.
The Soilwork tour. That was.
Yeah, and then I pieced out. Yeah. And then those guys went to Europe with 5.0 and who else? I forgot. 36 Crazy Fist. That was not your first European tour?
Yep.
And then prior to that was Kitty. They did 8 weeks with Kitty. Yeah, I wasn't a part of any of that stuff. I bailed.
Well, I'm glad I saw
via
that
email.
Yeah. All right. Let's not get. We've done this enough.
Bailed via email while the rest of the band was driving on cross country from Seattle, the last show where he left and didn't play. And we broke down.
Yep.
Oh, the anger that was inside of me. But all is forgiven.
See how he got triggered? Yeah, it was a weird time for me, dude. That was when I was realizing I had a mental illness. So I didn't have a language for it. I was just out of my mind. But
and the frustration of not knowing how to sing.
Yeah, losing my voice like every 3 shows.
Every show.
It was tough.
Wow.
How mad you'd get when Mike D would suggest me.
Who do what?
How mad you'd get when Mike D would suggest that we eat at Denny's.
Oh God.
That's all I remember from that tour. Like, I don't want to fucking go to Denny's.
Well, dude, at the time, in my defense, I guess, at the time I was vegan. And vegan back then versus vegan now is a completely different world. You know, we'd go to Denny's and I'd have toast and tomatoes, you know, like it was horrible.
I fucking hate Denny's. all tour. Mike D's like, yeah, let's hit up Denny's. I fucking hate Denny's.
It was either that or Cracker Barrel or Waffle House. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I could mess with Cracker Barrel. There was stuff for me to eat there. Oh God. Yeah, fun times. We had a lot of fun.
Me sleeping on the floor of the van, waking up and having one of your bottles of piss pressed against my face.
Yeah, so I would drink so much water to try to stay hydrated that they didn't want to keep stopping for me to pee. So I was like, fine, fuck it. I'll just pee in bottles. So yeah, there would be pee bottles in the van that would just, you know, when it hit the brakes, they would roll around. People like, there's piss all over the place.
He's got the bladder of a chihuahua.
You have the bladder of a freaking cow. It's just huge.
I can piss a gallon.
Yeah, you really can, dude. It's funny. If you're on a tour bus, people are like, did you leave the water running? No, Adam's in there peeing. He's been in there for like a half hour. It's all relevant to the record, right, Jimmy?
I'm a large framed man, all right?
You're all bladder, baby.
How did you guys all meet? Because you mentioned all the bands that you guys played in the area. There was Aftershock, there was Overcast. Like when you guys were forming Killswitch, were you guys kind of aware of all your guys' bands and what you were trying to get to? Because
yes, it started with me and Mike becoming friendly. I liked Overcast a lot, and just started talking about starting a side project when both of our bands were coming to an end. And then I duped Joel, who was in Aftershock, into playing in Killswitch Engage. I fooled him. He didn't want to join another band. And I told him we had Aftershock practice one Saturday morning, and Mike just showed up. He's like, who the hell is this guy? I'm like, you're in this band now, bro. And then after that, to find Jesse, my brother actually put out his band's 7-inch on his label. So, you know, through Jesse, through my brother.
Yeah,
Cool.
old school, like phone calls. You know, he asked me to be a part of some project he was doing that didn't really work out. It was like a weird Pink Floyd style covers of Slayer songs, if I remember correctly. Do you remember that?
That's like almost 30 years ago. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was a weird thing. You actually called me up asking if I would be interested in doing that, like a song for a 7-inch for your brother's label. And that didn't end up working out. And you're like, hey, well, I have this other thing if you want to come try it out. And he mentioned Mike D from Overcast. And I was like, I'm in, because I was a huge Overcast fan. So that's, if you remember, that's how it started. You want me to sing on some weird song you were doing for a comp for your brother's label.
I'll blame my brother for that.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's good. I think that just about covers it. Do you guys have anything you'd like to close with? Any memories from that era?
Just make sure you feature our bladder sizes in the story.
It will not be edited out.
That's perfect. I guess for me, if I were to say anything, I'm just super, super grateful that people give a damn about that record and still care about what we do. It's an honor and a privilege. And sometimes I still can't believe I get to do this for my job. It's been an incredible adventure so far.
Yeah, it really is amazing. Like we were talking about earlier, it's just like when we made that record, I was literally thinking we'd be broken up in like a year. And here we are 20 something years later. Jesus.
Yep. 22 years later.
And you guys are working on new records.
Our band can drink now.
Yeah. Yeah. It sure can.
And we do.
So you guys are working on new material, though. It sounds like.
Yeah. Today is day one, and you guys are keeping me from it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
There you go. Good ending.
Yeah.
All right, Adam. We'll go get to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got to eat something first. I'm starving.